Hi, I'm Dr. David Perl, the Quit Limerence Doctor, and welcome to this video on disclosure or non-disclosure. With limerence, we see two themes that come up perhaps more than anything. One of these is about disclosure. Should I tell my limerent object about my feelings towards them? And the other common issue that we see is around going no contact. And there is a separate video I've made about the need to go no contact. But this is about disclosure. Do I tell my limerent object how I feel? And this video is based on my own personal experience of disclosing. I disclosed about 6 times over the course of 4 years. And it's based on the hundreds, if not thousands, of stories that I've read on the limerence.net website, and also with clients that I've worked with that have had limerence as well. So a common trait with limerence is this need, this deep need to want to tell our limerent objects about how we feel about them. There's an inability for us to sit with these overwhelming feelings that we have. And we believe that by disclosing them, we're going to get rid of this burden that we're carrying around. Now, the reality is this rarely, if ever, happens. I mean, the very reason that we are in limerence is because there is some obstruction to us consummating this relationship. Now, I'm coming at this talk from the perspective that you are already in a committed relationship elsewhere. If you are available for a relationship and your limerent object is available for a relationship and there is contact between the two of you, it's not some fantasy figure who might be a film star or some other personality, then disclosure is totally appropriate. And it's the only way that you're probably going to find out whether this person likes you or not, and whether this can morph into something that is of a more permanent relationship or a more enduring relationship. But where there is obstructions to consummating the relationship because you or your limerent object or both of you are in pre-existing relationships, then you have to look at, is disclosure relevant or necessary or appropriate? So I think there's a number of issues going on with disclosure. Firstly, as I mentioned before, it's these feelings that we have are overwhelming us. And part of the problem with limerence is it suddenly opens us up to feelings that we've never had before, or perhaps we've buried and suppressed for many, many years, many decades perhaps in many cases. And limerence cracks open or shatters open the defenses that we've armored ourselves with over the decades. And again, this goes back to childhood. And I keep saying that limerence, just like all affairs start in childhood. Limerence starts in childhood. I do not believe that we get limerence unless we have a childhood that perhaps was not totally what we needed. I do believe that so much of our limerence goes back to our childhood and being raised in a family where many of our needs were not met, where we suffered what we call complex post-traumatic stress, this small t trauma, where we have just the drip of not getting enough love and not receiving unconditional love, not being valued, seen, validated, held, loved, all that good stuff that we need as babies and young children. However, I think there is perhaps one caveat to that. And one of the things that I've talked about recently in some of the articles I've written is the high number of people that seem to be on the autism spectrum, who have traits of Asperger's, who are what we call neurodiverse. And we did a poll on this on the forum a while back, looking at ASPE traits. And it did seem as though about half of the people who responded to that survey did have traits that were quite similar to being very neurodiverse. And that's way higher than the general population. It runs at about 1 in 60, 1 in 80 people, the rate of being on that spectrum at some level. And that in itself is fascinating. And maybe there are some actual brain structural changes in the brain or the ways that our brain work that is different to the average person. However, I don't think it's the answer for everybody with limerence. I think there are many people with limerence that are not on the spectrum, but just somehow get caught up in this whirlwind of infatuation, addiction, obsessiveness. So we believe that by disclosing, we're going to relieve ourselves of all this inner angst that we feel, because we can't sit with the feelings and the not knowing. And by disclosing, maybe if our limerent object says, yes, they do reciprocate our feelings, we would think, great, well, that's why I'm feeling this way, because they feel that way about me. But the reality is it doesn't stop those feelings. Even if we knew the feelings were reciprocated, we're still going to have those feelings. And in some ways, it might make it an even more dangerous situation, because if we know there's reciprocation from our limerent object, then perhaps there's more opportunity and more desire for us to pursue the limerent object and to make the fantasy a reality. And the sad fact is that many people that do go down that path and crystallize their relationship with their limerent object into a full-blown affair with a physical connection as well, very rarely does it lead to good results. I mean, you just have to look at the divorce rates for second marriages, and they are way, way higher. Something like 70% of second marriages fail. So disclosing just to release that inner angst is not the answer. I think another reason that we want to disclose is because of the drama triangle. And again, I've made a video about the drama triangle, a whole video about this in this series, because this does play out very much so in limerence as well. And I think part of the desire to want to disclose is in some way to want to rescue our limerent object, who more often than not is playing the victim in some way. Again, watch the video because that will help you understand the dynamics that play out with the drama triangle. In my experience, the other thing that happens is that when we disclose to our limerent object, they then know that we are attracted to them. And either consciously or unconsciously, and I suspect more often unconsciously, they know then that we are a good source of narcissistic supply. And they will use us to get their needs met. And again, I've talked about narcissistic supply in another video, but I liken it to having a fuel hose attached to your head and having all your energy drained out of you by the other person. This interaction does play out where quite often the person that we are attracted to has an equal level of narcissism to ourselves. And that might be a hard thing for us to acknowledge or admit, but I do believe that this plays out within limerence. And so by disclosing, they know, as I said, that we're a cheap, easy, readily available source of fuel, their narcissistic supply, and they will use that when they can. They say hindsight is an exact science. And if I knew now what I knew back then, I would never have disclosed. I would have just sat with my feelings. I would have made excuses when my limerent object asked why I was behaving in a certain way, why I was being off. When I started to go low contact and no contact, I would have just fudged the answer. She didn't need to know why I was struggling with my feelings. I didn't need to tell her that she was the reason why I was pulling back. And if anything, I think it made her feel very uncomfortable around me. And I don't want anybody to feel uncomfortable around me because of my own issues. This is a shorter video because really, disclosing or not to disclose in my book is a simple no, don't do it. Resist it if you can. So for this video, what I'd like you to do is just sit and think for a moment about all the reasons why it might help you to disclose and why it wouldn't help you to disclose. Put down your own list of the pros and cons. And then if you can really understand that disclosure is not going to help your situation, why not think about journaling about these feelings? On the limerence.net forum, we have an area where you can actually do your disclosure on the forum, but not directly to your limerent object in a anonymous way. So journal about it, get it out your body. I think that really helps. Get it out your system. If you've got a therapist, talk this through with them. Come and join the Zoom groups that we do every alternate Wednesday evenings. Come and join that and talk through about this need that you have to disclose and get support from others that perhaps have been further down that journey and have disclosed and have learned the hard way themselves that it didn't help. If anything, it just caught them up in this spiral even more. So there's some of the things that you can do about this urge, this need to disclose, and how you can learn just perhaps to sit more with the feelings and avoid getting yourself into this whole messy, sticky situation of disclosure. I hope that helps you. And as I said, come and join the forums. Love to see you there. Love to hear more of your story.